Most people think survival skills are for people living off the grid or bracing for the end of the world. They're not. Half of these work right now, in your house, on an ordinary Tuesday. Here are 25 oddly useful home survival hacks that actually work. Hack 25, the wet cloth fire barrier. If smoke starts filling a room during a fire, most people's first instinct is to bolt for the nearest door. That instinct can get you killed. A closed door is one of the most effective barriers between you and fire, and a wet cloth, a towel, a shirt, anything absorbent, pressed firmly into the gap at the bottom of that door dramatically slows how fast smoke travels toward you. Smoke inhalation kills far more people in house fires than the flames themselves. The carbon monoxide and toxic gases in smoke can incapacitate you within minutes in a confined, smoke-filled space. Buying yourself even 5 extra minutes changes everything. The wet cloth doesn't stop fire. What it does is reduce the airflow that smoke travels through. It's the same principle as why firefighters close doors when they clear buildings. A sealed door with a wet cloth at the base has saved lives and continues to. This costs nothing, requires nothing to purchase, and takes about 3 seconds to do. Hack 24, crayon candles. A single crayon burns for approximately 30 minutes. This isn't a fun rumor from the internet. It's been tested repeatedly, and it holds up. The paraffin wax in standard wax crayons is chemically close enough to candle wax that it burns in nearly the same way, and the paper wrapper acts as a functional wick. In a power outage, a box of 64 crayons is technically a 32-hour emergency lighting supply. They're non-toxic, slow-burning, and far more stable than improvised candles made from cooking oil and string. They also won't melt in summer heat the way many candles will, so they store reliably year-round. Stand them upright in a small mound of clay or putty to keep them steady. They give off low, warm light. Not enough to read fine print by, but more than enough to navigate a dark house, find a child's room, or keep people calm when the power's been out for hours and nobody's particularly happy about it. Hack 23, the toilet tank backup water supply. The toilet tank, not the bowl, the tank on the back, holds between 1.6 and 2 gallons of clean water. That water comes directly from the municipal supply. It is the same water that comes out of your kitchen tap. Most people have never once thought about this, and that's a missed opportunity because it's a meaningful reserve. When a plumbing failure, pipe break, or emergency cuts your water supply, you have a real buffer sitting a few feet from wherever you're reading this. Use it for basic hygiene, manual flushing with a bucket, or, carefully treated, as a last resort drinking supply. One note, if your tank uses one of those blue tablet or chlorinated drop-in systems, that water is no longer safe to drink untreated. Plain tank water is fine. Chemically dyed or treated tank water is not. Worth checking now, while you're not in an emergency. Hack 22, duct tape as a wound closure. Before anything else, get to a doctor when one is available. That's not a throwaway disclaimer, it's the actual goal. This hack is about the gap between when something goes wrong and when you can reach professional care. In a genuine emergency where medical help isn't immediately accessible, a strip of duct tape can hold the edges of a clean laceration together. You apply it across the cut, perpendicular to the wound, not along it, to pull the edges together and reduce bleeding. It won't replace stitches, but it can keep a wound closed well enough to limit blood loss and contamination until help is available. Military field guides and backcountry first aid manuals have included improvised wound closure techniques for decades. Duct tape is not sterile, but in many emergency situations, neither is anything else available. Clean the wound as best you can, dry the skin around it, apply the tape carefully, and treat infection prevention as a continuing priority until you reach care. Hack 21, bleach for water purification. Unscented household bleach containing 6% to 8.25% sodium hypochlorite, and it absolutely must be unscented with no added thickeners or cleaning agents, can make contaminated water safe to drink. The CDC has published this guidance for years, and it remains current. The ratio is 8 drops of regular strength bleach per 1 gallon of clear water. If the water is cloudy or visibly dirty, double it to 16 drops and try to pre-filter out the sediment through a cloth or coffee filter before treating. Let it sit for 30 minutes. After 30 minutes, smell it. A faint chlorine odor means the treatment worked. No odor means you need to repeat the dose and wait again. Most people in disasters don't die from the disaster itself. They die from contaminated water. Dr. Gregory Gray, infectious disease epidemiologist at Duke University. This is not pleasant water. It tastes like a public pool, but it's safe. And the alternative, drinking untreated water from a compromised source, carries serious and potentially fatal risks. Keep a bottle of plain bleach in your emergency supplies and rotate it annually since bleach loses potency over time. Hack 20. Steel wool and a 9-volt battery. Touch the terminals of a 9-volt battery to 0000 grade steel wool, the finest grade, not the coarse stuff used for scrubbing pans, and it ignites almost immediately. The fine steel fibers have enough electrical resistance to heat up and combust when current flows through them. It requires no technique, no practiced skill, and works in wet conditions where matches or lighters fail. This is a legitimate emergency fire starting method. It's reliable enough that outdoor survival instructors regularly include it in basic kit recommendations alongside other methods. The battery and the steel wool store separately and don't degrade quickly in storage. Combined cost is about $3. Few 2-item combinations deliver more practical value than this one. Hack 19. Your dryer lint is free tinder. Every time you clean the lint trap in your dryer, you're discarding some of the most effective natural fire-starting material available. Dryer lint is fine, dry, highly combustible, and catches a spark or flame almost immediately. It burns long enough, several seconds at minimum, to get kindling going, which is often the hardest step in building a fire from scratch in difficult conditions. Compress a handful loosely into an empty toilet paper roll, and you have a fire starter that performs comparably to commercial products sold at outdoor stores for several dollars each. Make a few. Store them in a small Ziploc bag to protect them from moisture, and add them to your emergency kit or camping supplies. This is one of those hacks that costs exactly nothing and has a measurable, practical upside. Hack 18. Elevation as flood strategy. The principle is obvious until you're in the middle of a flood and you haven't thought any of it through in advance. In a flooding situation, knowing where your home's highest points are and having a clear, pre-decided plan to get there is practical preparation, not paranoia. More importantly, knowing which items need to be elevated before the water arrives makes a real difference. Essential medications, documents, passports, hard drives, phone chargers, and emergency food and water should all have a designated higher ground location. Flooding rarely gives a generous warning window, and when water is already entering the house, you don't have time to make these decisions on the fly. If you live in a flood-prone area, consider storing a waterproof bag or plastic tote on an upper floor or high shelf year-round, preloaded with the things you'd want most in a hurry. Rotate the food and water periodically. Know your evacuation route and know at what point you leave the house, rather than trying to ride it out. The decision to stay or go is always better made in advance, not while you're standing in 6 inches of water. Make the plan now, while it's not an emergency, so that when it is, you're executing, not deciding. Hack 17. Rubbing alcohol as disinfectant and emergency fuel. Isopropyl alcohol at 70% concentration or higher is a proven disinfectant for wounds and surfaces. Most households have it somewhere in the medicine cabinet and use it occasionally for cuts. What fewer people know is that it's also clean burning enough to serve as emergency fuel. It burns with little smoke and relatively low visible flame, which makes it significantly safer for indoor use than alternatives like gasoline or kerosene. A small amount in a metal bowl or camping stove can heat food, boil water, or sterilize instruments during an extended power outage. Keep the container sealed tightly since alcohol evaporates readily, store it away from heat sources, and be measured with quantities. A small controlled burn is what you're after, not improvised chemistry. Hack 16. The 3-signal distress call. 3 of anything, 3 whistle blasts, 3 horn honks, 3 light flashes, 3 gunshots is the internationally recognized signal for distress. Most people don't know this, which also means most people don't know what to do when they hear it from someone else. A basic emergency whistle can produce 100 decibels or more. A human voice screaming at full volume in ideal conditions reaches about 80 to 85 decibels, drops off quickly with distance, and exhausts the person doing it within minutes. A whistle is louder, carries farther, requires almost no physical effort, and can be sounded consistently for as long as you have breath. They cost about $2. Clip one to your keychain, your emergency kit, and your hiking bag. If you ever genuinely need to signal for help, you'll be very glad it's there. Hack 15. Cool water for burns. Not ice, not butter. When someone burns themselves, the two most commonly applied home remedies are butter and ice. Both make things worse. Butter traps heat in the wound and promotes bacterial growth. Ice causes vasoconstriction and can layer frostbite damage on top of already injured tissue. The correct response, and the medically supported one, is cool running water over the burned area for a minimum of 10 to 20 minutes. Not cold, cool. This gradually draws heat out of the tissue, reduces continued thermal damage, and significantly decreases pain. It requires no supplies. It costs nothing. After cooling, cover the burn loosely with a clean, non-fluffy material. Cling wrap or a clean plastic bag works well because it doesn't stick to the wound. Then, get professional care for anything beyond a very minor surface burn. This is one of those hacks where the most useful information is what not to do. Hack 14. Fill your freezer to save food. A fully packed freezer maintains safe temperatures for approximately 48 hours after power loss. A half-empty freezer manages around 24 hours. This is USDA guidance, based on the thermodynamic reality that a larger mass of frozen material takes longer to warm than a smaller one. If your freezer is mostly empty, fill the unused space with containers of water. They freeze solid over time, help the freezer maintain temperature during a blackout, and can be moved into a cooler to preserve high-priority perishables if an extended outage stretches beyond the freezer's holding capacity. There's no downside to this. It improves your freezer's efficiency slightly, costs nothing, and builds in an automatic emergency buffer. Hack 13. Newspaper as insulation. If you're unexpectedly cold and have run out of practical options, newspaper stuffed loosely between layers of clothing is an effective emergency insulator. The principle is the same as commercial insulation. Trapped air reduces heat transfer. Newspaper creates small air pockets that slow the movement of heat away from your body. This was well understood and widely practiced during the Great Depression and wartime rationing periods, when people couldn't afford or access adequate cold weather clothing. It's not comfortable and it makes noise when you move, but in a genuine cold emergency, it works. The critical word is loosely. If you compress the newspaper too tightly, you eliminate the air pockets and lose most of the insulating benefit. The same principle applies to layering in general. 3 thin layers trap more air and therefore retain more warmth than 1 thick layer of the same combined material weight. If you find yourself unexpectedly cold with limited resources, think in terms of trapping air rather than piling on weight. Newspaper between a shirt and a jacket, or stuffed into boots around your feet, extends your cold tolerance meaningfully. It's not a solution, but it's a bridge. Hack 12. The bathtub reserve. Before a major storm or anticipated infrastructure disruption, fill your bathtub. A standard tub holds between 40 and 60 gallons of water. That's substantial. It can supply flushing water, washing water, and, filtered and treated, emergency drinking water for several days. For a cleaner and more efficient version of this, a product called a water bob is a large food-grade plastic bladder designed to sit inside a standard bathtub and hold up to 100 gallons. It seals properly, protects the water from ambient contaminants, and includes a hand siphon pump. If you live in a region with hurricanes, extended drought, or seasonal outage risk, one stored in a closet is a reasonable and inexpensive precaution. They cost around $30 and last indefinitely until needed. Hack 11. Petroleum jelly and cotton balls. A cotton ball coated in petroleum jelly is one of the most consistently effective homemade fire starters in survival literature. The jelly extends the cotton's burn time from a few seconds to several minutes, long enough to reliably catch kindling, even in damp or windy conditions where matches alone struggle. Make a batch during a quiet afternoon. Coat cotton balls generously in Vaseline, store them in a small waterproof container like an old pill bottle, and tuck them into your emergency kit or camping gear. They weigh almost nothing, cost next to nothing, and outperform most commercial fire-starting products in field conditions. This is one of the most recommended items in wilderness first responder training for exactly that reason. Hack 10. Mylar emergency blankets actually work. Those thin, silver, crinkly blankets that look like they were made from discarded spacecraft material are genuinely effective, not symbolically or vaguely, but in a measurable thermal sense. Mylar reflects up to 90% of radiated body heat back toward the person wrapped in it. The material is also windproof and waterproof on the reflective side, which addresses 2 of the 3 primary contributors to hypothermia. The emergency blanket was originally developed by NASA in 1964 for the space program to protect equipment from thermal radiation in orbit. NASA historical records. The survival application came shortly after. Today, they're sold for about $2 each, fold to the size of a deck of cards, weigh less than 2 ounces, and can last indefinitely in storage. Keep one in your car, your emergency kit, and your hiking bag. If you're ever caught outside in cold, wet, or windy conditions without adequate gear, this $2 piece of foil is doing a significant amount of work. Hack 9. The Moser lamp. Daylight without electricity. During daylight hours in a power outage, a clear 2-liter plastic bottle filled with clean water and about 2 teaspoons of bleach, positioned so that sunlight passes through it, refracts and scatters light in a way that can illuminate a dark interior room comparably to a 40 to 60 watt incandescent bulb. The technique was formalized by Brazilian mechanic Alfredo Moser in 2002 and later adopted across thousands of homes in the Philippines, Bangladesh, India, and parts of Africa. The bleach prevents algae from growing inside the bottle over time and clouding it. The bottle acts as a lens, scattering one concentrated beam of sunlight into diffuse room-filling illumination. It only works during daylight, requires sunlight to reach the bottle directly, and works best when the bottle passes through a thin surface. In a home setting, propping one in a south-facing window angled to throw light down a dark hallway works reasonably well. Free light, no batteries, no electricity, no moving parts. Hack 8. Superglue for small cuts. Cyanoacrylate, the active compound in consumer superglue, was first synthesized in the 1940s and almost immediately observed to bond skin on contact, which was considered an inconvenience at the time. By the Vietnam War, military medics were experimenting with it as an emergency field wound closure tool. The medically formulated version, N-butyl cyanoacrylate, is used in hospitals today under several brand names. Standard consumer superglue is not the same formulation and is not sterile. But for a small, clean laceration in a situation where proper closure isn't immediately available, a thin layer across the dry, cleaned edges of the wound can hold it together and limit contamination. Apply it across, not inside, the wound. Do not use it on deep punctures, large lacerations, heavily bleeding wounds, or anywhere near eyes or mucous membranes. This is a temporary bridge to actual medical care, not a substitute for it. Hack 7. Know how to shut off your gas. This one doesn't involve clever material repurposing. It's simply information that a significant portion of homeowners and renters have never acquired, and that becomes acutely relevant during an earthquake, a gas leak, or an infrastructure failure. Your gas shutoff valve is typically located outside the house near the gas meter. To close it, you turn the valve so it's parallel to the pipe, perpendicular to the pipe is open, parallel is closed. You need a wrench to do this. A crescent wrench works. A dedicated gas shutoff tool is better. The time to learn where this valve is and how it works is right now, not during a gas emergency when the smell is already in the house and your hands are shaking. Keep a wrench accessible near the meter. Tell the other adults in your household where it is. If you rent, this information is worth getting from your landlord or property manager and writing down somewhere accessible. One more thing. Once you shut off your gas, don't turn it back on yourself. Restoring gas service after a shutoff requires a qualified technician to check the system and relight pilot safely. Shutting it off is your job in an emergency. Turning it back on is theirs. This is not complicated, but it has to happen before you need it. Hack 6. The penny in the freezer test. Place a cup of water in the freezer. Once it freezes solid, set a coin on top of the ice. If you lose power and it returns while you're away, the position of the coin tells you what happened to your freezer during your absence. Coin still resting on top of the ice. The freezer held temperature. The ice never fully melted. Your food is very likely still safe. Coin sunk to the bottom of the cup. The ice melted completely at some point, meaning temperatures inside your freezer rose enough to potentially compromise perishables, and then refroze when power returned, giving you no visible indication. This is a passive, no power, no app safety check that requires a coin and a cup. It's particularly useful after extended travel, during storm season, or any time you've been away from home for more than a day and can't be certain about power stability. Hack 5. Zip ties. Have more uses than you think. A bag of heavy-duty zip ties belongs in every household emergency kit. Their survival applications go well beyond bundling cables. They can temporarily hold a splint in place, padded appropriately and not cinched tight enough to restrict circulation. Secure tarps over broken windows or damaged roof sections. Bind cracked pipes as a very short-term repair. Replace broken buckles or clasps on gear and bags, and keep improvised assemblies from falling apart when you need them most. They're also useful for marking evacuation paths, securing a door or gate that won't close properly after storm damage, and bundling emergency supplies into manageable grab-and-go packages. If you've ever tried to organize a chaotic emergency bag in the dark, you know the value of being able to bundle things together quickly. They're lightweight, they don't corrode or degrade in storage, and a bag of 100 heavy-duty zip ties takes up about as much room as a deck of cards. In a situation where you're improvising with whatever's available, having a reliable, versatile connector on hand changes what's possible. Hack 4. Charcoal for water filtration. Activated charcoal, available at most hardware stores and aquarium supply shops, is one of the most effective natural filtration media in existence. Layered in a container with sand and coarse gravel, it creates a basic but functional filter that removes many impurities, sediment, organic compounds, and odors from water. The adsorptive surface of activated charcoal is extraordinarily large relative to its volume, which is why it's used in both industrial water treatment and household pitcher filters. To build a basic gravity filter, take a plastic bottle or container, punch small holes in the bottom, and layer from bottom to top a piece of cloth, activated charcoal, fine sand, coarse gravel, then another cloth layer at the top. Water poured through the top exits, the bottom notably cleaner and better tasting than when it entered. An important distinction: filtration removes particles and improves clarity. Purification kills pathogens. You need both to make questionable water reliably safe. Filter first to remove sediment and improve taste. Then boil or chemically treat to eliminate biological threats. If you can only do one, boil. If you can do both, do both. Hack 3. The 72-hour prep reality. FEMA has recommended for many years that households maintain a minimum of 72 hours of emergency supplies. The reasoning is direct. In a widespread disaster, emergency services are overwhelmed and response times stretch to days. If you've called for help and nobody's coming for 48 to 72 hours because every available resource is already deployed elsewhere, your supplies are what carry you through that window. The minimum is 1 gallon of water per person per day, non-perishable food that doesn't require cooking where possible, essential medications for at least a week, a basic first aid kit, a battery or hand crank radio, flashlights with extra batteries, and a charged power bank for your phone. Most people reading this don't have this assembled. Most people are also quietly aware they don't have it and have been meaning to get around to it. An afternoon and a modest purchase closes that gap. Emergencies are not respecters of good intentions. Hack 2. Window breakers and seatbelt cutters belong in your car. A combination tool that breaks car windows and cuts seatbelts should be within arm's reach in every vehicle. They cost around $10 and are sold at gas stations, hardware stores, and auto parts retailers. In a vehicle that's submerged or inverted after a rollover, a stuck seatbelt and an inoperable electric window are a life-threatening combination with a short time window. Car windows are tempered glass and are specifically engineered to resist blunt, distributed impact, which is what most people instinctively try when panicking. Tempered glass shatters from a focused, sharp impact at or near a corner. A window-breaking tool is a hardened point designed to deliver exactly that. Your elbow hitting the middle of the window is not going to do it. Keep this tool in the center console, the door pocket, or clipped to your sun visor, somewhere reachable if you're inverted or partially submerged and have a matter of seconds. Hack 1. Download offline maps right now. Both Google Maps and Apple Maps allow you to download regional maps for offline use. Once downloaded, navigation using those maps works entirely on GPS. a satellite-based system that operates independently of cell towers, internet infrastructure, and local power grids. The GPS satellite constellation was designed from the outset to operate independently of ground-based infrastructure. It continues to function when terrestrial systems fail. U.S. Department of Defense GPS program documentation. In a disaster, evacuation, power outage, or any situation where cell service is unavailable or degraded, a phone with pre-downloaded offline maps can still navigate accurately. Download your home region now while you have reliable connectivity. Include adjacent counties or the next region over if you live near a boundary. Evacuation routes don't always stay local. A phone that can tell you where to go when the network is exactly what's failing is a genuinely useful piece of equipment. It doesn't cost anything extra. It just requires doing it before you need it. None of these hacks require survival expertise, a specialized background, or any significant investment of money. Most of them take less than an afternoon to implement across the board. A few items purchased, a few things learned, a few small changes to what's in the car, the kitchen drawer, and the emergency kit. The honest reality is that most of us live one bad storm, one extended power outage, or one unexpected emergency away from wishing we'd thought through even the basics. None of that has to be dramatic or expensive. A whistle on your keychain, a can of unscented bleach in the cupboard, offline maps on your phone, these aren't survivalist obsessions. They're just sensible things that take almost no effort when you're not in crisis and make a real difference when you are. If this video was useful to you, hit the like button. It helps this channel reach more people who'd actually benefit from the content. Subscribe if you want to keep seeing practical information that holds up when it matters. We'll see you in the next one.